Hey guys, welcome back. Holy moly, I don't know what happened, but we don't ever want that to happen again. My goodness, I thought my computer was going to catch on fire or blow up or something. My goodness, it was all tied in knots, but here we are, take two. I love you guys. Thank you for staying with me, staying positive. There's nothing worse. Well, there's worse things, but not very many things worse than working all day on a video, putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it, and then having a connection issue. So anyway, thank you guys for hanging around. I want to say this again because I'm going to delete that other video. If you guys are looking to get your ornaments, your messages, or your mementos on the Suzanne Morphew Christmas tree, here's the information. Please send it to 733 Blake Street, Salida, Colorado, 81201 by November 15th. So you have a second chance to go grab a pen and a paper and write that address down, and be sure to get your memento, your ornament, whatever it is, on that beautiful tree. So I know last year Gonzo and I had the opportunity to go to the the tree, all the trees. Every one of them was absolutely beautiful. I'll never forget walking through the little park there and seeing all those trees and how the families have them decorated with their loved one. A lot of them are deceased, passed on. A lot of them are military. It's really a neat experience, guys. If you want a cool experience in small town USA, Salida, Colorado, go check out the Christmas trees at the what's the name of the park again? Let me see if I can find it real quick. At the park there in Salida. So I don't see the name of the park. I thought it was on here, but anyway, thank you, BZ Mama, for sending me that. I know you don't like me to mention your name, but she's a great friend of mine, and I'm grateful for her and the stuff that she sends me. And she's just become a really good friend, and she's a great person to get out there and help on those committees, putting those trees together and stuff like that. So I also want to give a shout out to all the people of Salida who have taken Suzanne Morphew under their wing and put together that tree and do so many other things. I had a chance to look at the affidavit again today, kind of browse over it. And there's a lot of really good people in Salida, a lot of great police officers who work for the Chaffee County Sheriff's Department, Sheriff Molino, and some of those others that were first on the scene. I think Deputy Brown. You guys are tremendous in the work that you do. So I just wanted you guys to know that. What I wanted to start out talking about tonight is something that I found interesting way back in the day. I'm not going to try to pull up those videos this time around because I don't want things to go haywire again. But I actually have somebody waiting in the back wings that wants to get on here tonight, and we're going to have a discussion. He's devoted, this individual has devoted probably hundreds and hundreds of hours researching the Suzanne Morphew case. And I know some of you guys know him from the discussion boards and things like that. You've seen his name around. But I found him to be very interesting, and his knowledge is pretty unsurpassed when it comes to the Suzanne Morphew case. So I want to pick his brain a little bit tonight. His name's Terry Taylor, and we're going to be seeing his face for the first time and hearing from him. But before we get him on here, I want to kind of go back to my theory that I mentioned the other night on my live with Barry Morphew traveling down the 226 when he left for Broomfield. Instead of turning right and heading back down into Salida, all of you guys know that for some weird reason, he turned left. And the excuse that he made up was absolutely ridiculous. He said he was following a herd of elk and that he was hoping that they shed their horns and, kind of observing their behavior, seeing where they were going and things like that, which is a really dumb excuse. All of you know it. I even read somewhere where elk don't shed their horns until later on in the year, so investigators weren't buying that. But anyway, it's always been my theory that he took that side road. So I want to pull up Google Earth and just kind of take you guys down that path one more time. And you guys that were with me a little while ago, bear with me, but a lot of people hadn't seen this yet. So I'm going to pull that up real fast if you guys don't mind. This is Google Earth, and we're going to zoom right into Maysville, Colorado. So it's probably going to make me go back and no, it actually held it there that time. So anyway, let me zoom out here. You can see the body of water there right here. That's the area of focus that I have right now. I'm going to see if I can zoom out here to the point where you guys can kind of get your bearings about you. Okay, here, right here is the pull out, the 225. You can see my little mouse. I'm moving it around there. It loops around. This is where they found Suzanne's bike. And if you come down this way and go back, this is Puma Path right here, and it leads you right back into the Morphew, the old Morphew property here. So just so you guys know, so this is what I think happened. I think Barry left, well, we know he left his house here, and he went down Puma Path, and he came this way, and somewhere right in here is where he said he saw the elk. And he said he turned left. Okay, so if he went left, this isn't Broomfield. This isn't Denver. This isn't the right direction. So I don't know why he went this way. He says he was following elk, but I don't think he was up here on the 225. Terry, I hope you're listening backstage, Terry, because I'm going to pick your brain on this and see what you think. But look at how close it is to this side road that leads all the way up here past this little body of water, and it loops around, and this is what I was trying to describe before. It loops around and comes right back up here to the 225, and right here is where I believe the area where they found Suzanne's helmet. So it makes sense to me. Barry says this is where the area where he turned around and went to Denver, went to Broomfield, the job site. So but what really intrigues me is this body of water right here and how close in proximity it is to this little road. Okay, let's zoom in here and take a better look at that. Now you can see that it's so close to the road that you could almost drive your vehicle into it. Okay, now what's interesting about that is Barry, being the clever guy that he is, the cunning guy, I should say, he came up with an idea to tell investigators that he was looking at this herd of elk. And that gave him not only an excuse to turn left, but it also gave him an excuse to drive very slowly and to stop on occasion and not have the investigators question him, because if he's following elk, we're assuming they're moving pretty slowly, and he's just kind of creeping up behind them like he did me on that last video that we saw. He just kind of creeped up behind me there. So he's creeping up on these elk supposedly. But what my theory is, and this is just a theory, this is just an idea to toss around, guys. It's not set in stone, no pun intended. But if you look at these bags of concrete, this is a Quickcrete, 1 hour working time, 3 hours walk on time. And I'm not going to show it this time around, but I went to Home Depot today. I looked it up. I researched it. They sell many different varieties of these, but that one that I showed there is the one that dries the quickest. We all know Barry had plenty of time to mix up concrete and have it set up and have it dry enough to where he can place it where he wants to place it, even underwater. So that's my theory. And now I want to bring on my guest tonight. His name is Terry Taylor, and I want to see what he thinks about this theory so far, and we can open this up for discussion. So, Terry, are you ready? All right, here we go, Terry. Welcome, Terry.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing tonight?
Good, better now. That first take was pretty brutal. I was about 10 seconds away from turning on the Big Bang Theory reruns, But
Well, I would not have blamed you one bit if you did that, Terry. I'm surprised people are still hanging around. They must be bored tonight. So,
no, they love you. And like, I'm so happy to be here because, I've been writing you for a long time, since the very beginning this whole thing started. And I just respect, what you've done, your, feet on the ground. And I truly believe that if you hadn't done those series of videos, and I'm not talking about the one video that everybody talks about with the interview, I'm talking about the whole beginning when you just went there on your own because you wanted to help. And that's what you've always done. You're just here to help. You're not here for any other motive. You're not here, whatever. You're just here to find Suzanne and figure out what happened.
hey, it's in my blood, brother. Like I can't get away from this. I've tried to get away from this for months, dude, but it just keeps pulling me back, pulling me back.
Well, I mean, if you weren't like doing that at that time, I truly believe that nobody would be talking about this. Just
well, I
another
appreciate it. Thank you.
situation in a rural area that nobody, there might have been something on the news that, first day, a couple of days later, but then you know what? You never hear about it again. And there's so many of those out there. And I know that you're following up on other ones besides this. But I'm a little different in that I can only do one thing at a time. So,
yeah, Terry, that's what you mentioned, that you're only following the Suzanne Morphew case, which I found interesting. Most of us YouTube sleuths, we cover several different cases, but I found it interesting that you were just covering this one. So tell us, how many hours do you think you've devoted to this case?
You know what? I don't want to say because then it looks like I have no life. But I have a job, a full-time job, like a high-level, executive-level job. But I am always been like, ever since I was a little kid, just after justice, and I just can't see people getting picked on. I'm that guy that I mixed between all the different groups in high school, and my little friend on the bus that got picked on, I had to stick up for him, and I feel the same way about Suzanne and what was going down here. Plus, I have been blessed with a very good bullshit meter, or BS meter. I don't want to say inappropriate language, but
no, go ahead, buddy.
Really,
go ahead.
Like, see what's going on, and I have a good meter of what's true and what's not true. So all that together, I found this case fascinating. There's been a couple others in the past that I've looked into, but this one obviously has been going on for a very long time. And so I kind of just started digging in, and it just, things that are so obvious to me, it drives me crazy when people don't see that. And so I dug and dug and dug, and I, look into the details. I guess the devil's in the details in these kind of things. And
absolutely,
I went through that affidavit, which was almost as painful as your first video that we just did a few minutes ago. But
hey, I've had worse. Hey, believe it or not, Terry, I've had worse videos.
I know, I'm just teasing you, man. So there's a lot of information in there. You got to really dig for it and organize it. And I've done that. And I also am always been about, I'm not tied to one thing. So I look at what other people are saying and then try to figure out, okay, does that make sense or not? Then luckily now we've had over a year. It was a year from when and I'm not going to say when Suzanne disappeared. I'm just going to say when Suzanne was murdered. To when Barry got arrested, there was a whole year of information being, obtained. And I feel that, the law enforcement did a great job of, spending that year and doing multiple interviews with him. And they would do interviews originally, and then he would tell a story. And then they would follow up with another interview asking the very same questions, but yet showing him some data that they had that he hadn't seen. And then he would change his story. So, I mean, I think everybody or the majority of the people on this video are of the same opinion that, okay, let's not waste a lot of time, and we could do this on a separate video because I can do this all day long about why, how the reasons he did it and why he's guilty. But let's focus on finding Suzanne. And so taking the information that we've obtained over a year of interviews with him, and then all the telematics and the GPS data, and matching that up with what, our theories are. And then okay, so that's that. And then, and just, hey, Tyson, cut me off anywhere because I'll go on for 5 hours. But we take that, and then you have, so you have the information of the telematics and the GPS of where he was when he was there. You have his interviews of when, of what he said, what he was doing. And then you kind of match that all up with the time frame that we kind of now have of, somewhere. I can't imagine him hiding Suzanne in the daylight. So from darkness on that Saturday, whatever in May, late May, was it early May, 6, maybe 6 is safe. I'd probably say 10, because that's when he turned his phone back on. Because as you know, he turned his phone off at 2:46. When he got there, he ran into her. I believe he saw her texting with her boyfriend. He was already, having days and days of fighting with her over her wanting to leave him and all that, all those emails that he erased that they did find a lot of, fortunately. And then he was blue, and that's when he did what he did. So I think he probably at first goes, oh crap, what did I do? And I got to get out of this. What am I going to figure, how am I going to hide her, all this? And that, he's not going to do it in the daylight. So anywhere from darkness to when his car was seen with the telematics of opening doors, closing doors, driving and backing up in the driveway, that was at 3-ish a.m. So somewhere in there is when he did something with her.
Right.
So then you
right.
go.
Well, let me cut you off real quick, Terry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just ask you, because I know we had a conversation the other day and backstage again about my theory that, he strung her up in the trees like an animal, drained her blood. And then my theory, I was going to continue on with that and say that he put her in concrete and then placed her somewhere. And that may be what he was doing when I saw him the day before when he was soaking wet. Well, let me just ask you this. First of all, what do you think about my theory of him cutting her up?
I mean,
into small pieces.
It's about narrowing down the possibilities and then finding, eventually you get to what happened. So I don't think any theory is wrong, but my personal opinion is that thinking, okay, I'm Barry and I did this and I got to hide it and I don't want to be seen and I don't want anybody to find her. Knowing that today in this world, DNA, you just need a tiny little pinprick of any kind of substance to be able to identify that to a body. So in my opinion, I don't think that's what he would have done because, and I've told you this earlier, why take one piece of evidence, which is her body, and then turn it into hundreds or more pieces of evidence.
Okay, so you're leaning towards her being wherever she's at, and if we ever do find her, that she's going to be found as a whole person.
Unless I just think, plus, doing what you have said, in the trees and all that there would be a likelihood, and it only takes like a tiny little chance of them finding something, some spray off, something on the ground that he didn't account for when they locked down that house, for a week or whatever it was.
Yeah, no, it was more like 2 weeks or maybe even longer.
And then they did it again. I know. So
well, the first time originally they had that house for a long time, and Terry, I'll tell you, I've actually walked the grounds, and there's a lot of holes out there. So I know they had cadaver dogs. They were digging. They really searched that property well. They didn't uncover anything. So I don't know if she's there on the property. What do you think?
So I think, I guess back to what I was saying, I don't think if I was in his shoes, I would take one piece of evidence and turn it into 100 and then spread them around, because that just increases the likelihood that anybody could find one little speck.
Makes sense.
I have wavered back and forth on whether she's on the property or not. That's a tough one. It seems logical for the reason that just he could do it hidden that night with not being seen. But then again, you always got to think, if somebody did find her, if it was on his property, then there's only one person that points to, and that's him. And he wouldn't want that. Exactly. He would want it, just like all the alibis, and we'll get into that later, another time or whatever. Everything was meant to not point at him. So finding Suzanne on the property points to him, like, and nobody else. But having her close by, that opens it up, and that makes it a lot more likely that, because he had concealment of the darkness overnight without being seen, I think he could have went close. I do think that bobcat was involved, even though law enforcement said they think it's not, and I don't agree with that.
Okay, Terry, that brings up a good point. In the affidavit, it talks about the detectives that were initially on the scene. They had seen footprints in the bobcat's bucket that were barefoot. Now, what's interesting is, were those footprints, were they on the bottom of the bucket or were they on the side? Because that would make a huge difference.
I know. And, we're always at a disadvantage. Wouldn't it be the greatest day if we could just sit down with the FBI and go, this is what we think. What do you think? What do you show? And then help, because they could be using us. And I'm not saying you two and us too. I'm talking about the numerous people that are interested in this, with just having that many people out there, free labor, basically looking for things that they point people at. But yeah, it sucks to not have all the information, because having them say, which is so weird in that affidavit, having them say, we saw barefoot footprints on the thing.
Terry, let me tell you, and you know this because you've been following me a long time, which I appreciate. Thank you for following my channel. But we have some of the greatest internet sleuths right here in our chat tonight. So I want to ask them, is there anybody here tonight that knows the answer to that? I mean, I don't know if there's anybody, because it really didn't mention it in the affidavit, but it would be imperative to know where those feet prints were, because if they were on the side, it would indicate that there was a body laying down inside that bucket. And if they were on the bottom, then there's somebody standing up in that bucket. So, that would be nice to know.
Yeah. I mean, that's a weird little piece that they mentioned that, which is like everybody perks up. That means something, but then they don't follow up on it. So yeah, I don't understand that part.
Well, I'm gonna be brave here. Tin Lizzie is asking about what's the width of the bucket. So I'm gonna try to show a video, Terry, and I really hope this doesn't go to hell, but I want to try to show this video real fast.
I'm gonna let Joe watch me do my strokes here. So what I got is we have some bull.
No, you're hitting 100%, man.
Bolts, some nuts. I'm gonna try to. This thing is really heavy. I don't know what it weighs, but it's probably easily over 100 pounds. One started. I'm gonna start one over on this side. Oh yeah, smooth sailing now. Now I'm just gonna screw the rest of the bolts in here, and then I'll be right back with an impact. Now I'm back with the impact.
All right, Terry. Well, you know what? I wanted my viewers to see that, and thank God that that worked. Oh my goodness, I was so nervous in the beginning. But
Yeah.
did that play okay? Was that fuzzy or
Yeah,
anything?
no, that was fine. I think we got it.
But let me say real quickly. So Tin Lizzie had the question, how big is the bucket? And I think there's a lot of people that aren't familiar with what a bobcat even is, right? It's a small tractor, and you that was the bucket. Now, what's interesting, I wanted to show that for two reasons. Number one, the size of it. You could definitely fit a full body in there. Number two, the affidavit talks about how Barry changed that blade out, and that's exactly what that guy's doing there. He's changing the blade on the front and changing out the bolts. Well, when the deputies arrived, they found that the blade had been changed, the bolts had been changed. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I have always felt that, and I go back to what I've said at the very, very beginning, that you got to put yourself in the mind of, okay, if that was you, what would you do? And if I am a professional landscaper owning professional digging equipment and I need to hide a body, guess what? I'm going to use it. I don't think Barry's, and I'll go into this other stuff about the jacket that he threw away and why would he wear a jacket and dig a hole, because that's very strenuous and you'd be hot. But yeah, I would use a bobcat to dig a hole and I would drive it near the home somewhere and use it. I think 100% that that's what he did.
That he definitely used the bobcat.
Yeah. I mean, law enforcement said that they ruled it out, and I don't know why, because then they first said there was barefoot marks in there. The telematics that it has it, but yet, okay, here's the weird thing about that is it had some kind of rudimentary telematics, but it was hooked up to the Verizon network. You've been on that piece of property, you know that the cell service there sucks.
Absolutely.
And so terrible. I don't know how that would work to upload any information that they could get.
Well, that's why I think they did the best they could, and they may have been off here and there a little bit, with some stuff.
And that's back to your on the
yes,
parallel road to 50 there. Yeah,
exactly.
And I believe that that's a possibility, to go back to that.
Okay, but I don't know. Well, I guess they did rule the bobcat out, but I know in the affidavit, and I don't know the page off the top of my head, but it talked about when Detective Grusing and the other one, I can't remember his name, when they approached Barry when he was working on the bobcat. And I don't mean working on it. I mean he was using it at a job site. Mm-hmm. And so he climbed down off of it, and they were kind of quizzing him right there in front of the bobcat near the bucket. And he continued to beg them to clear his name, clear me, over and over. But as they're asking him questions, Terry, he's nervously rubbing his foot along the blade of that bobcat as they're asking him questions about Suzanne. Now, what they observed, it was strange behavior. It was almost like he was telling on himself as he did those like subconscious, actions. And so I think they know the bobcat was used and involved in the cover up, but I just don't think they have enough physical evidence to.
Yeah. And I don't know if they need to prove that he used it. I think we are looking at this because we want to find Suzanne, and we're trying to narrow down, okay, what are the possibilities? And, using the bobcat makes sense, and using it near his home somewhere. Because if he was going to drive, like, just to go back, if he was going to drive somewhere else and use the bobcat, that means he had to trailer it. Okay, so his car doesn't show movement away from the home that night. Suzanne's car in the garage had telematics and they didn't really give any details, but I think if they had shown that it left the property, they would have definitely said that. They didn't. Macy's car, which is an older Range Rover, nobody mentioned that. And does it have a trailer hitch? I have a Range Rover myself. There, you can easily adapt it in 2 seconds to put a trailer on there. Could he have used that? Yes, he did. But yet again, I think that if he was driving around with a trailer and a bobcat, that would be a lot more noticeable, even though it's in the middle of the night. that somebody, anybody, one person, one camera, one anything would have seen him. So if I go back to I'm him, okay, I'm going to do this quietly and invisibly. And the only way to do that is to do it somewhere near my property where there's nobody, driving around.
Okay. So basically you're not really liking my theory of the concrete and turning. What do you think of that? I mean, do you think that's plausible though, Terry,
Yes.
with all the
Well,
studying that you've done?
I think it's plausible. Like I said, everything, let's narrow down the possibilities. Let's knock them off. Like, our friend
Right.
Gonzo says this all the time. Go through the list and go boom, 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 go down and knock them off. So, yeah. And the one that your theory in that pond is easily knocked off. Like anybody, if you're, viewers live in Salida, that pond is shallow and small. And I think it'd be pretty easy to figure out if there was something in there. And I
Yeah.
have to think they must have checked it because they
Yeah.
checked Foos's reservoir right away.
Yeah, they probably checked that off their list right away, but you never know. You just never know. I mean, I know Adventures with Purpose came out and they were starting to dip their toe in the water.
Yeah.
And then they got spooked and took off. But I don't know where they were or what they were searching at that time. So, it would be worth a second look, in my opinion.
Definitely. And that would be easily checked off the list. There is the other, we'll go back to the cement theory. I'm not discounting that completely. Originally, long ago, there was thought that he could have done something with her, because that whole Riverside job site was in question at one point. They even dug up part of it, not all of it. I wish they'd gone to the beach part, but they didn't. But there was talk of the possibility of cement cylinders missing at that time. And I never heard anything on that as far as follow-up. But then, like I sent you, I don't know if you got it. I sent you a text with a photo because Barry and his buddy George had a side gig like after the murder, before he got arrested, where he put in gate posts in his old property, actually the property where he's staying right now. He put them in there. And then there's another set like on 225 around the corner.
So hold on, Terry. I just want to make sure that my viewers understand what you're saying here. So Barry put in some fence posts, and at the base of them, now you're telling me that you can fit, I mean, they're big enough that you can fit a human body inside of them. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, they're gate posts for these gates that have been put in recently.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And they are, at least 12 to 20 inches diameter and they're a cylinder that's been put in. They dug a hole with and then they filled it with cement.
Right.
And then they put in a post. And
okay, so Barry,
bigger than you think. Like you look at the photos.
I've actually been there, and this gate that you're talking about, that's the one that I mentioned in that when it was snowing, and I said Barry put in a nice new fancy gate. So that gate is fairly close to where, almost right in front of where he's staying now, there on Puma Path.
Yeah, I mean, there is, like I said, there's the I guess it's called the Cushman House.
Yeah,
that has a brand new gate that Barry and George put in. Barry's property, old property, has a brand new gate that him and George put in. And then there's another one up the road a little ways. And that's all been recent. And so the theory on that is that he didn't do that the night of the murder, what happened. There's a lot of people that think she was moved, and he had a whole year to do it. And that, of course, makes it a lot harder to figure out what happened because.
Well, okay, so up here, I put it up on the screen. Let me see if I can find it real quick. It was from one of our longtime followers here. She was saying that he moved her so many times. What do you think? I mean, we know that one of the charges is tampering with the deceased body, so we can assume that he moved her at some point. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, tampering with a deceased body, I think, means a lot of different things. I think it's assumed that he moved her at least that night, and I think that qualifies for that charge. But he had a year of not really being watched that closely day to day, that he could have, found a better place. And that makes it a lot more difficult to find her, to be honest. But that's these gate things. I'm not saying that that's it, but That is after that. So he would have had to move her to put him in those, because he didn't put in those gates until, and I'm not saying his friend George has anything to do with it, but there were times, according to what I heard, that Barry was alone early to do some of that work without anybody around.
That's a very interesting side note there, Terry. You know, that's something that I hadn't heard of, and you're telling me that that's kind of what Gonzo is theorizing after being up
Well, he
there.
did, and I don't know if he's still on it, and maybe offline here we can like get with him and figure that out.
Yeah, yeah. I want to, you know, I would like to give a shout out to Gonzo, and you know, he's a cool dude, man. I don't really have any beef with Gonzo.
No, he's
whatsoever.
awesome, and he's like you, just a trooper trying to find the truth, you know, and that's all his only agenda.
No, I like that. I like that.
I respect
that theory. So anyway, I'm kind of jumping around here, and it's my ADD. I apologize, Terry. I know that you're like opposite of ADD. And by the way, listen, somebody said that you could pass as a Baldwin brother, and I'm seeing that, brother.
No, as long as it's Alec, I'm good.
Well, Alec, did you see the news? Did you see what happened today?
I know, I saw that. You know, it's
terrible.
I don't think it's his fault. But I used to go, and this is long ago. Steve Young was my doppelganger for a while.
Steve Young? No way.
People would stop me in the pet store, you know, or the whatever, and say, "Hey, Steve," you know, it was weird, but obviously that was a long time ago.
You know what? We all age, brother. But if you went from Steve Young to Alec Baldwin, bro, that's quite a jump.
Well, I'm saying Alec. They just said Baldwin brother. There's like 3 of them, or you know.
No. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a couple questions. We got a lot of.
I can do this all day long.
Right here, this is the joy catcher. I think she's the one that said it. Yes, he does look like a Baldwin.
Well, thank you.
A lot of people here don't like Baldwin, but we're not going to get into all those politics tonight. So
no.
If you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask them now. I'll try to get it up on the screen, and you guys can kind of help us dictate the conversation here. Jilly Bean, Billy, I don't know Billy Baldwin, but okay, here we go. Becky Rogers. Listen, Tyson, please explain why he wouldn't have put her in the trash, be dropped in different places. Okay, so Becky is asking, well, you can see it there, Terry, and I'll go ahead and put my 2 cents in.
Yeah,
first.
I have my own theories on that. Yeah.
I just don't think that he was brave enough to haul her body all the way to Broomfield and risk being pulled over by the police and getting caught or anything going awry. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't see that. I think Barry's more careful and more cautious than that in his planning. What do you think?
Well, I go back to the fact that I wouldn't take one piece of evidence and divide it into 3, you know? So why would you put it in 3 different places? Because the likelihood that somebody may stumble upon one of them is a lot higher. The other thing is, you know, you don't know who. I think there's too much of a chance. It's unfortunate about the whole thing with the trash dumps. This is just like the OJ trial. You know, he dumped evidence in the garbage cans at LAX. And same thing is here. You know, by the time the police figure out, like, okay, there's been a crime, and then, you know, they have to like figure out like, where did this person go? And it takes days and days and days before they're like, okay, let's go look at, you know, a trash can and where did that go into the dump? And by then there's like 50 tons of garbage put on top of it. And there's just virtually impossible. So anything he put in any of those trash bins, I know people always talk about, oh yeah, they must have some of it, but I just don't see that being possible.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. You know, the only thing I thought is remember when he walked over to the trash can, I think it was behind Men's Warehouse or McDonald's, one of them, he had a closed fist like this. And then whatever he put into the trash can, he started pushing it down. What do you think? What did he have in his hand that was so small? And why was he so adamant to push it down like that? What do you think?
Well, that whole thing with the trash dumps is like a whole nother topic, because he threw away so many things that nobody would throw away if they weren't trying to hide something. So I don't know that particular trash dump, like what that particular item was, but he, had multiple things he was throwing away, like his camouflage jacket. Who throws away jacket? Who, throws away boots? Who throws away a planter, whatever you call a pot? And that's part of my theory of going back to where Susanna could be, is that means that he used that in what he did. So there's a plant, or there's a tree, small tree on top of her, because he did challenge the investigators by saying, you should be looking for dug up, dirt, like showing recent activity. But he took care of that, either putting that plant on there, and with that bobcat, possibly putting rocks, on top of it too, to make it look like it'd been there a long time. So
absolutely.
I don't know what that little item in particular was, but okay, why, Barry, did you hang out behind the Men's Warehouse for 45 minutes on a Sunday morning? Well, who does that?
Yeah.
And then he had no answer. He had no answer. So that goes back to the whole guilt thing. But okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the comments here, seeing if there's any questions, but we kind of bounced around, and Terry, that's kind of the way these things go. You can plan all day long, and then it ends up being totally different. We just kind of
I enjoy it. This is my favorite. I love this. If you want to do this again, I'd be more than happy. I can answer any question, because I think I have an answer for pretty much anything that's a logical answer, not a made up answer.
Right. No, you've spent a lot of time on this case. So now, one thing that right here, this woman is bringing up Beach Bum again. She's talking about a planter, and that was one of the things that they mentioned in the affidavit, that he was throwing away there in Broomfield. So what's your theory on that? So wait a minute, but before we say that, let's talk about what do we know that he threw away? We know he threw away a camouflage jacket, a planter, and then he said what, like wrappers from McDonald's and garbage, basically. What else was there?
Yeah, he said at McDonald's he threw away wrappers. Here's the funny thing. After all 5, we're talking 5, who in the world would ever go to, if you have stuff in your truck, just throw it away in one place. Don't go to 5 different places unless you wanted to spread it out,
Yeah, but Barry, he had an answer for everything, dude. It was so hard to read the affidavit.
Yeah, but they weren't good answers.
No, they were awful, and he was tailoring them according to what the investigators, the information they were giving him. But
yes.
What I found interesting, Terry, is that he said he was such a tightwad, right? He's a self-admitted tightwad. He's a penny pincher. He doesn't even want to have garbage service. But yet, later on in the affidavit, the investigators are asking him about this firewall that he had on his phone, or something. I don't know a lot about the technology side of it, but he had something on his phone. I think it was a firewall.
Right.
And he said he didn't know what it was. He said, well, I just thought it was, an extra level of protection or whatever. So I bought it, not even knowing what it was. Well, I know those things aren't cheap. Those things aren't cheap, right?
Right.
They're pretty expensive to get those things installed on your phone. So why is he saying he doesn't even subscribe to trash service, but yet he's throwing money away that he doesn't even, that's total horseshit.
So the trash service thing is interesting in the fact that I'm hoping that the prosecution will show bills paid to the trash company or bills paid to the HOA, which may cover the trash. The funny thing is that his girlfriend that everybody seems to be talking about a lot, he met her at the trash bin at his property.
Yeah, he sure did.
So obviously there's a trash bin there, and why wouldn't he ever use it? So producing a bill that shows he,
exactly. Well, I've been there, Terry. I know exactly where you're talking about, where that dumpster is. It's halfway between Cushman's and Barry's, and I think it's kind of a community one. So why did he have all of this trash in his truck and saying that he doesn't have trash service, and so he had to go throw all that stuff away. It's
Right.
just
And then he had to
it's a
drive
bunch of
by.
BS.
He had to drive by the trash dump that you were talking about
Exactly.
to get to these other ones. So
Right.
part of it is he had a lot of time to spend in Bloomfield because he needed to be there all day for this alibi. So he did have a lot of time to waste because he wasn't going to work on the job. He was there 15 minutes. And so he had all day because he could not leave Broomfield until he got the call that said she's missing and they found her bike. Then all of a sudden, guess what? He's leaving. So he had all day to spend. Half of it he spent in the hotel just lounging. And then the other part, he was probably dumping stuff out. And the funny thing about the trash is that at the end of the day, when he shows up at the bike, they look at his truck and it's full of trash.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
How much trash do you have in your car that you can't throw it away in 5 stops?
Exactly.
It's back to common sense, Tyson.
Exactly.
It makes no sense that anybody that didn't cover up a crime would do any of this stuff. Like that's
exactly. There, you would expect that there would be a few like coincidences here and there, like things didn't add up or make sense, but the whole damn thing, every single point that he tries to make makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
Zero.
And so here's I was going to say this for another like video if we do one, but the whole bike ride thing, if you want to get into that real quick, I think that most people now, even the judge, kind of has agreed that that bike ride never happened. Okay, so you were there. He just threw it like a little bit over the edge just so that they make sure that they found it.
Exactly.
It wasn't even down on the bottom of the hill like he said that it was.
Hey, while you're talking about that, I'm going to see if I can bring that picture up real fast. So keep going, okay?
All right. Okay, so I'm sorry to jump around because we were on a completely another thing, and now we're going to the bike ride.
Kind of the way it goes when you have people like an audience asking questions and stuff.
Yeah. I'm fine with this, but I just hope you are. Okay, so.
Oh no, I'm good, buddy.
So the bike ride, I think everybody's pretty much in agreement that, the police were pretty clear that there's no sign of, skin tissue, rocks being disturbed, anything that would show somebody
Absolutely
tumbled
nothing.
over that,
nothing.
Hill.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of ruled that out. And I think most people are in agreement. So here's my thing. If you agree that if you agree that that bike ride never occurred, then Barry had to have killed her.
It all hinges on that, doesn't it?
You can't agree with one without the other.
Exactly.
Because if it was somebody else, they have zero motive to stage a bike crash. Because why would they care? If they took her from the home, why would they care that they think that the people think that she was, something happened away from home? Barry needed to have something be known to have occurred away from the home because the home is where he was. So that's the whole thing. Like you can't go, this is like the O.J. Simpson civil trial. This is exactly what Petrocelli did. You can't agree with one without the other. It's so clear. And I hope that the district attorney in Chaffee County, goes this direction.
Absolutely. That is a very, very good point, Terry. And thank you for helping me see that because it really does hinge on that bike ride. And
nobody else had access. First of all, nobody else had access to the garage. Nobody would have known whose bike is who. How are they going to know that's her bike? There's probably 4 bikes in there because there's like a bunch of people. Nobody, unless you're going to accuse the daughters, which nobody wants to do that because that makes no sense. So it's only, and then, that whole thing with, Suzanne never would ride without her camelback, her gloves. There was something else. I don't know. There's like 3 things that.
Yeah.
And I'm even a bike rider, but I'm just blanking on it. And that she always never rode from the house. She always drove to the trailheads.
Right.
So
right.
None of that bike ride makes sense.
Well, also, Terry, when the detectives first arrived on the scene, and they were asking for a piece of clothing so that for the dogs, the cadaver dogs or whatever, the search team, Barry took him into her closet, and the deputy. Do you remember what he saw laying there on the floor?
It was a
What?
bike shirt or something, right?
Yeah, bike shirt and her gloves.
Yeah.
Well, why did she go on a bike ride when her gloves are right there in the closet?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
it makes absolutely no
so
sense.
Barry needed the bike. The whole reason the Barry needed the bike ride to happen because he needed that crime to be committed away from the home. So that's why he did that. And that's why he wrote that stupid note. Like instead of saying Suzanne is whatever years old, brunette, 5'4", whatever, how many pounds, she wrote blue helmet, blue bike jersey. You know, he needed people to find that stuff to know that she was on a bike ride. It's back
Bingo.
to nobody else would do that. Like there's no other reason on the planet that anybody would do that. Like unless you were trying to cover something up.
Well, Terry, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but after I got that video of Barry and I knew he was lying, the very next thing that I focused on is, did Suzanne go on a bike ride? I could have focused on a million different things, but I said, did Suzanne Morphy really go on a bike ride? Because I knew that it all hinged on that.
Yeah, no, I remember your videos. Yeah, it didn't make sense. And, you were there and I wasn't, and you saw his eyes and you knew what he was,
Yeah. Well, Barry, he's very believable. And my good buddy Mark from Indiana, and I hope Mark's in here tonight. I don't know if he is, but Mark deserves a lot of credit. He's one of those guys that's really humble, very kind, and he likes to stay out of the limelight. But he grew up with Barry, played Little League with him back in Indiana. He's over there in the Evansville, Indiana area right now. But, he's a great guy, and he's given me a lot of information about Barry's character. Barry he's always been very cunning. He's always been very smart, so he left no stone unturned, and so, that's why, investigators and even us sleuths are sometimes, struggling to produce something tangible because he really covered his bases well. He's very, very cunning and very smart.
Well, I think I'm going to respectfully disagree that Barry's smart, but he had the advantage of living in a very rural area and knowing, the outdoor world. So, kudos for being good at hiding a body, because that's basically what he did. The rest of it, I think he was careless, trying to cover his tracks because of, all this stuff that we're talking about. And I could go through this. I have probably 20 points. I haven't even looked at notes once. I have a whole thing of notes, but there's probably 20 other things that made no sense that he did wrong. But but he did hide her well. And he did say, okay, so this is the other thing. Motive. Did he plan it or did he not? I think it was more spontaneous, but he might have had it in the mind. But that day when he was with Morgan Gentile on that Saturday, he told her, just who says this? I can bury a body and nobody will find it. Like, have you ever said that in your life to anybody?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think I have either. So
anyway. It was definitely something that's been on his brain for quite a while,
Just
and
a random conversation.
I'm not saying, and what I meant when I said he's very smart, he's very cunning. I didn't mean he was, intelligent in terms of physics or, rocket science or anything like that. I'm talking about just what you're talking about, the outdoors and having all that knowledge, of, like he said, I could hide a body and nobody would ever find it. He knew the outdoors like nobody else I've ever seen. That's what I meant on that. So,
yeah, no, I mean, I guess I'll agree with you there, but, I mean, it's just, there's just so much that nobody would do if they didn't do this crime,
Absolutely.
Just common sense stuff.
Okay, so that brings us to the question then. What's the likelihood of getting a conviction with no body? Let's assume that we never find Suzanne. In your mind, Is there enough? I mean, and according to I think it was one of the prosecutors, I think it was Jeff Lindsay or one of them, that I think the guy that just resigned, said that there's no difference between circumstantial and physical evidence when it comes to the law. They're the same. So even though there's a lot of circumstantial evidence, there's still a lot of circumstantial evidence. Would you agree with that?
Yes. I think it really is going to depend on the skill of how the prosecution lays out what they have. I don't know the law well enough that, like, because that hearing was very convoluted, and yes, we were getting little twits, what do you call them, Twitter like posts here and there. So we weren't there, and so it seemed very like haphazardly. They were not like doing it like linear. They were just bouncing around, and they would get on a topic, and then they would not like follow up with like, okay, ask this one more question, and then they wouldn't do it. So I'm hoping if they are concise and orderly, that there is a lot that just anybody could look at it. Like I do. Like I don't like when I first came into this, Tyson, when you did that first video, at that very moment, I just wanted to find Suzanne. I didn't think he did it. I mean, I didn't know he did it, but the evidence led me to believe what I believe. And the police, the law enforcement, they don't have a thing out for him. They just go with what the evidence shows them to go. And so I'm hoping that there's enough. I don't think they need a body, because I think if you just lay it out correctly, it seems pretty obvious what had happened. Fingers crossed, there is still between now and May the opportunity to find a body, even though now snow's going to be hitting pretty soon.
Yeah. Well, Terry, we're getting close to the hour mark, so I want to take some questions here or some comments from our subscribers, and then we'll kind of wrap this up. But it's been a fantastic discussion. I thank you for your time. This Lisa Hogan, this question on the screen: do you think Barry wants to live close to the Puma Path home because he has something hidden on that property? That's definitely a possibility. I think Barry is on his perch, they're at the Cushman house for a reason. I don't think that's he could live in Poncha Springs, he could live in Salida, he could live anywhere, but he chose to go right back up there to where this crime scene happened. And I find that, Terry, highly unusual and quite frankly very weird that he wants to be up there.
It is weird. It is weird because even if Barry, I mean, in the weird like fantasy world that he didn't do this, he knows that it probably happened like near there, and like why would you want to be there?
Well, I thought, why was he was in such a hurry to sell the house and get the hell out of there, and now all of a sudden he's back up there within 100 yards from his house, from his old house. It's just insane.
Well, I think part of that is, you can't, I mean, selling a house after there's been a conviction of a murder in that house, that property value drops dramatically like a rock. So I think he needed to get out of there as soon as he could. But he also probably needed to pull out the cash and all that. Yeah. But just, being that close is very weird. I don't think, in my opinion, he had a whole year to do whatever he wanted to do. I don't think now that they're actually watching him that he's needs to be nearer there for that reason. I just think that I don't know the Cushman people and I don't know their relationship with Barry, but they obviously know him because that's actually the house that, ironically, the very first couple of days after Suzanne went missing, that when those friends from Indiana came to help search, and Andy Mormon was one of those people, they all stayed at that house.
Yeah, they did.
So I don't know if they're letting him stay there for free. That could be the case because I don't know where he's pulling out that much dough to pay a market rate for a Airbnb.
Well, Terry, his excuse again was, we don't like being in that area because the girls are scared, because we got people creeping around. They want to move and go down into Poncha Springs. And all of a sudden he's back up there. Like he doesn't even realize it makes him look like an idiot. you know, and I say he's smart, but then he turns around and does things like
Yeah,
that, and
I
I
think
think,
that's
God,
just a matter of convenience that they're probably giving him a deal to stay there. Like that's
yeah.
my what I think. I don't think there's more to it than that.
So you don't think that he's there just to kind of keep an eye on everything too and chase people out of there and
I
stuff like
mean,
that?
there was a lot of instances where he did weird stuff, like when the investigators were, you know, searching his home. He went up the hill with those same people that were helping search, and he wanted to spy on the investigators to see what they were doing in the house. Like, why would you do that if you didn't have anything to hide? And then why was he up there? Putting trail cams up when Andy's people were searching with a shotgun.
Yep.
He didn't want him on his property. So I, I mean, this is part of the intrigue of this whole thing is figuring it out because everything makes sense.
Well, Terry, I'll tell you what. Whenever you're ready to put your boots on the ground, you let me know, and we'll go up there and we'll search that area. We won't go on private property. We'll make sure that we check all the property lines before we go. But somebody needs to search that area. I'm going to go back to my original theory that she is, if they are going to find her, they're probably going to find her somewhere in that vicinity, in my opinion. I don't know if it's going to be that little pond, but that is where everything, after a year of studying this case and talking to the FBI myself, talking to other people, it all comes back to that little area right there, and I'm going to stick with it. But what T.S. Jackson wants to know, Terry, and this is going to be your closing thought here. What are your spidey senses telling you?
As far as what?
The whole thing, as far as this whole case goes, what do do you
Well,
understand?
you got
Do you
another
understand
3
what that means?
hours.
Huh?
You got another 3 hours because that's what it would take. I mean, he did it. Like Suzanne was a low priority target. Like there's been no murder.
Yeah.
At least I could be wrong, but I thought I read this somewhere. There's been no murder in Chaffee County since the 1980s. So, okay. So this girl that lives rurally, nobody knows her. She's very low key. She's going to be the second. And, it just doesn't make any sense. So,
No, and that's what I liked about Profile and Evil coming on board way back in the day. They were talking about victimology. Do you remember that?
that's what kind of got me on this whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the victimology. She's a very, very, very low risk of being murdered,
Right.
or being kidnapped or whatever,
So my spidey senses say that Barry did this and that he hit her somewhere close by. I think, like, I don't know how many times you've seen your own video of the interview, but if you really, like, I just watched it the other day again, that it's very clear where he's trying to direct you and where he's not. And I was like, I wrote you, I've never really been a triangle theory person like others, but that now kind of makes somewhat sense because it's in that same area that he could get to without being seen that night, near his property, but not on his property.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to, because I don't think John Grusing would care. But when I was in San Diego, I was working on another case, the Maya Malete. And by the way, Larry was just arrested. I don't know if you saw that or not. But
I did.
That's awesome. So kudos to those Chula
That's
Vista.
very similar because there's no body with that one either.
Very similar. But kudos to the Chula Vista Police Department on making that happen. They were patient and they have a strong case against him, it looks like. But anyway, while I was there, my phone rang. It was John Grusing. And he said, "Hey, Tyson, this is, he goes, is Tyson there?" I said, "Well, can I take a message?" He goes, "Well, this is the FBI." I said, "Okay, this is Tyson. You got my attention." And he goes, "Hey, do you remember when Barry was telling you when you were filming that, do you remember like any of the minor details about where he was trying to steer you away from? And was there anything off camera that he mentioned that's not on the video, or what are your thoughts?" He was actually asking me what I thought about it. And so I know that they were definitely taking that into consideration as well, that video, and where Barry was saying, I think he was pointing kind of back, behind his house where they have that RV park. He said, we searched all that area over there. Don't worry about that. And
Right.
so I know they were definitely, you know, putting some stock into that as well. So, but
Yeah. So that, and like, I guess you want to wrap this up. So I guess let's wait.
no, go ahead, buddy.
Well, that whole thing about the Garfield, is a Garfield mine.
Yeah, the Garfield mine. Yep.
He did go that direction. That I've kind of heard that it might be a vertical shaft. That does make some sense. I know that Grusin, I think, even said that he thought maybe he did something with her there. But yet nobody's like found anything there. So that's what's so weird about some of this stuff.
Well, you know that John Grusing and those guys, they actually went out there and put their boots on the ground. They've been there. So they've been out there looking. They need help, and he didn't come right out and say it, but that's why I got on here and I said, I only have I don't even have 20,000 subscribers, so I'm small compared to some of them out there. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to put this out here in front of everybody that I can and say, get out there, put your boots on the ground, and let's go. Let's give it one last go before the snow hits, because you never know. And I know those guys, they need help. Their hands are tied in a lot of cases on what they can say or do. But right. I know by talking to him and his tone and everything that they really appreciate the people that are out there helping. So.
Well, good. I mean, I hope that everybody that's on this call or, knows somebody that if they know somebody that lives there or can get there, that, we continue the search to find her,
Well, you know what? All you got to do is fly into Denver Airport.
Well, you know what? You and I offline, we talked about this. I'll do it.
Okay.
I have no problem with that. And, good old Gonzo wants to do it too. So
yeah, let's organize. I'm serious, man. Let's organize a search. Cause
we sit down and we
just a bit too.
And,
so,
the best case scenario would be to actually sit down with the FBI for an hour and say, okay, what do you guys think? And then we'll go check it out,
Yeah, for sure. Well, if they see this, maybe they'll throw us some hints or something, but.
Well, it's only helps them with, anyway, but yeah, I'm all over that. I'll work it out on my schedule.
All right, Terry. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know we were kind of all over the place, but that's kind of how these go. And I just really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your knowledge with us. So
anytime. And there's like a ton, like I said, I have pages of notes that I was going to go to, but I didn't go even look at them once. So there's a lot more on there that we can talk about. Well,
let's chat again. You'll have to be a guest on my show again. Okay.
All right.
All right, Terry, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Have a good weekend, everybody.
All right. You too. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. All right, guys. So what I want to try to do is, I want to try to go back to a couple of these videos, because if they don't work, then who cares? But I want to show you now, when I start this video, what I want you to focus on is behind me, you're going to see that road that I'm talking about, the 226, and you can actually see the tree laying down where Barry laid it across the road there. So let me see if I can pull this up real fast. Where are you at, Suzanne? All right, so here we are at Puma Path. You can see right down there, Barry's got him a nice new fancy gate. And right over there, the orange no trespassing sign. So I'm gonna go on up to the creek here. Guys, I'm not going to be here very long because I heard that gunshot earlier, but I wanted to show you this. I'm right back here where we found Suzanne Morphew's bicycle. I have a theory about what happened now after finding that police tape down the road. So anyway, this is where I believe that Barry pulled up in his truck right here and tossed Suzanne's bicycle down this hill. You can see it right down there. He tossed her bicycle and then he went this way and went down that road, and that road right there leads to where I just was in my other video, where I found that police tape and that abandoned cabin and where that fire was. He went up that way and took that back road, and that's where I believe he disposed of the, almost fell. That's where I believe he disposed of the helmet and quite possibly Suzanne. So I think we're onto something here. Stay with us. Right. All right, guys. So you can see my theory started a long time ago about Barry going down that road. And, I found that crime scene tape down there. They found the helmet just across the road. I think I showed it earlier on in Google Earth. I think it was this time around. I hope I did. But anyway, if I didn't, you guys can go look at Google Earth and kind of study that area. But I want to thank all you guys for being here tonight and participating. You guys are wonderful. Thank you again, Terry Taylor. I know we're all here for one mission and one goal, and that's to find Suzanne or to bring her justice, one or the other, or both. And, let's continue to do this. We're going to make that happen for her. So hope you guys all have a great night. Are there any? I'll take a couple more questions here, guys. I know it's probably past some of your bedtime, but anybody have any questions that we want to? You're a critical thinker, Tyson. Well, thank you. My seventh grade math teacher probably wouldn't agree with you, but thank you very much. I really appreciate that. So thank you all. I'm just looking here. Any last questions before I say goodnight? If any of you guys want to join us on a search, let us know. It's going to happen soon. You guys stay safe out there. We'll talk to you later.